Hello, you superhumans out there. I'm Sally Knopp, and we are in part 3 of our conversation between Nostradamus and Dolores Cannon. Now, remember, this video of Dolores Cannon was shot around 1996, and we're talking to a man who's back in the way back machine about the 14th, 15th century. And we're going to also review at the very end what our latest remote views and quantum healing hypnosis sessions are now revealing about, are we on the same timeline that Nostradamus saw and Dolores talks about in this video about the end of times in potentially 2029? Stay tuned to the end of the video and I will reveal to you what we are now seeing and how that's going to tie into even more woo at the next few videos that we do. So let's get into all this thing woo. Here we go.
It is an interesting question that what happens with all the people, because, well, we're going to be living on space stations. We're traveling in space. Probably a lot of us want to go live on the moon or on Mars or something. But it might be at the point that maybe we won't be reproducing as fast as we are now. It's possible. Because of my work with the aliens and the UFO work, they don't die until they're ready to die. So there's no need for new beings to be born if they're going to stay on the earth longer. I don't know what would happen there, but I think there'd probably be ways of working this out, maybe going to other places. Like a new adventure is all opening up out there. Well, Nostradamus said that from the time he was a child, he always had visions. He thought everybody had these things. He was very amazed when they told him this was forbidden. But he could always see things from the time he was a child. And he knew about the cosmos. You know, in his day, they thought that the earth was the center of the universe, of the sun. Everything was rotating, around the earth. And he knew different even before the times of Galileo. But he had to be careful what he said. But he'd been able to do this since he was a child, and he often wondered where it came from. And he knows that it came from God. It was a gift from God, because otherwise, he said, why would he be able to do it? I think he was a man out of his time. He was way ahead of his time, because the time of the Inquisition, he couldn't tell these things. But he did believe it came from God. He didn't know about being chosen. He thought of it more as a curse than anything else, because it did affect his life in many negative ways. Well, I think Nostradamus is recorded as being the most accurate there ever has been. Of course, Edgar Cayce falls in with that. He also went into trance. We found that Nostradamus would go into trance, and that's how he found these things. He would see the visions. And he said he would wake up, he would find that he had written the 4 lines with automatic writing. He said, I saw all these things, but yet I wrote 4 lines that referred to everything he had seen, which is about the same way that Edgar Cayce would do. He would go into trance and also have visions. There's probably been many others, but I think Nostradamus is the one that's the most famous. But I don't believe that, because we do have free will. And the idea is, if we know what's going to happen, we can have control over it. I think it's the job of any psychic to try to warn people. Even a modern day psychic, when they see something happen, they'll try to tell you, don't get on that train, or, don't take the car today if they see something happen. Otherwise, why have the vision if you don't try to help the people and warn them about it? So that was his primary purpose, was to let people know what was going to happen. Then, of course, if they ignore the warning, if they take the train anyway, or if they do get in the car, it's their own free will that has done that. Because we are a planet with free will, and we have to respect that. Because they said it would not be a test if you knew the answers. But still, when it comes to things of this magnitude, if you have warnings, you can do something about it. That's not really taking away from the lesson because you still have the choice of which way you want to go. Most people think that at the year 2000, this is going to be the end, or if we have it in this war, or even if we go into the Earth shift, the shifting of the continents, they think that is the end of the world. But it's not. Mankind is a survivor. He will continue to go on. Even if there are many lost, there will always be some around that will survive. Man is, he's here forever. So I asked him one time, well, then if this is not the end of the world, what is? And he said, many people have asked him, you could see so far in the future, how far can you see? He said, I can see to the end of the world, but not the end of time. He saw the world being destroyed when the sun went supernova. And when it would supernova, it would blast out all this heat and the earth would be incinerated. But he said, you don't have to worry about it. That's so far in the future that when it does occur, there will be no people on earth. They will have long since gone somewhere else. So you don't have to worry about it, but he could see how it was going to end. So we're going to have many things between now and then. But man is a survivor. He will always be around. There's much information out here about what they're calling the Earth shift or the shift of the axis. This is what would happen if all of the, say for instance, the polar ice caps would melt and all of the water would rush down. This would be caused very easily by an Earth shift. The Earth is sitting right now at an angle, a slightly off-center angle. And some of the people who have talked about Earth shifts say we'll do a complete flip-flop. We have no information about that. The only thing we have is that it would take a slight tilt. It wouldn't have to be very much. A slight tilt would be enough to begin the ice cap melting and to send the water rushing down out of Canada. But it's enough to do it that the tectonic plates will be forced against each other. They will be moving. Because when we did our maps, we thought, this is strange. Why are some of these areas being left when, according to the elevations and geology, they should not be left? They're not high enough. The mountain areas, you can see why they would be left. The other areas, why would they be left? Nostradamus explained that as the Earth takes that slight tilt, the tectonic plates will move. They will be forced against each other. So the center part of the United States would be forced upward as much as 2,000 feet, while the outsides would drop off, California and Florida. It's what happened on many of the continents, a forcing upward and then a dropping off because of the movements of the plates against each other. Now, many people have maps of what will occur, and I've done conferences with these different people, and mine are the worst. They show a lot less land left than any of the other maps. So I said, this doesn't mean that any of us is right or anyone is wrong. We all have pieces of information. Mine, again, seemed to be the worst case scenarios, as he was trying to show us the absolute worst would happen if you go to the extreme. If you will notice my map of the United States, there isn't very much left. The black areas are the areas that are left. The center part of the United States is the biggest section. That is the part that he said would be forced upward by 2,000 feet, while the other areas will be dropping off. California, most of what will be left will be the tops of the mountains as islands, a series of islands. And Texas and Florida, all those areas would drop. But the second map is dealing with Canada, and it's hardly any land left there because it's closest to the Arctic Circle. And as the water comes down, it floods all of those lakes. Those lakes come down and flood the Great Lakes, spread out the Mississippi and the Missouri rivers. So you can see how most of that area would be underwater. South America is the same thing, would be mostly the mountainous areas like the Andes that would be left, and the other areas where the Amazon River, that would go down. So this part of the hemisphere would be the mostly affected as the amount of land that would go underwater. This would occur because with the tectonic plates shifting, you would have terrible tidal waves earthquakes of unknown proportions. The volcanoes would be going off all over the world. Terrible storms. They said there's nothing on earth that could prepare you for this. It would be something that's never happened in our memory. We could not be prepared for the violence of this when it occurs. The one of Africa, see, the same way, the Mediterranean would be completely overflowing into the top part of Africa, and the desert areas would be underwater. The Holy Land would be all underwater, and it would be broken up into pieces. Europe is most of that will not be under its effect. There'll be some parts of England that will be affected, and as you can see, France and Spain as the Mediterranean moves up, and some of the Nordic areas because of the North Sea overflowing. But when I gave a lecture in Holland, and they looked at the map, they said, we don't need to look at that map to know we're going down. They said we were in a 3-story building, and they said this whole building would be underwater if that dike breaks out there. So they know that whole area is very vulnerable. It could all go down very easily. And there's a whole lot more to the part about Europe because he has many quatrains referring to England during this time, and that there would be so little land left that many of them would go to France to live. So there's a whole lot of prophecies dealing with the earth shifts. And the last one is the Asian continent, which will be the least affected. China a lot of it will disappear, but he said the Russian part of the Asian continent will have cracks, but it won't break up to the extent that the other areas would. Japan will have new land rising because of volcanic action, as will New Zealand and the Hawaiian Islands because of increased volcanic activity. But that is the least affected will be the Asian continent and the part of Russia. And of course, what continent don't I include in these? Australia. And when I'm in Australia, they always say, where are we? Can you figure out why I have not included Australia? It's not going to change. Okay. And of course, when I'm in Australia, they all stand up and cheer when I say that, But he said Australia was a unique continent because there was nothing for it to push against. It would move, it would float. Of course, it's going to have storms, it's going to have tidal waves, it'll have earthquakes, but it won't break up like the other continents will. It will be able to move. This gives it a very unique quality over all the rest of the continents of the world. But this is the information we got, and like I said, let's consider it the worst case scenario because the other maps that are coming out are much, much easier and a lot more land is left. A lot of people are thinking this is going to occur by the year 2000. We found there's going to be a lot of very important events occurring by the year 2000, but not the earth shift. It's way too soon for that. And other ones will argue with me about it, but I can only give you the information that we have. One of the quatrains was so complicated, we wrote a whole chapter on it. There was so much information in those small 4 lines. It was like peeling an onion. And I found the most important quatrains had the most information in them, were the hardest to decipher. And we had 3 astrologers working on that quatrain because it contained astrological dating. But they have all come up with a slightly different date. And this was dealing with the date of the Earth shift. Now, one of them, they said it would be 2004. The other one said 2029. I prefer the later date. Let's get it as far away as possible. But that gives us plenty of time anyway, but he said by 2029, and I believe it was going to be in October. The dates are in the books. We have the horoscopes for the dating that they came up with. But it's done like a detective story. All the clues are there. And another astrologer may come up with something totally different than what we found.
So there you are. 2029, the end of the world, according to Nostradamus, and what she found when she was talking, Dolores was talking to Nostradamus. Now, here's the thing. in the remote viewing sessions that we've done, and in addition to working with our QHHT clients, we're actually exploring whether or not this is still on our current timeline. And we are finding, as she said in the very beginning, can we change? And yes, we can. So, whatever it was that was the precipice for starting this earth change either has been changed because we've chosen a different timeline, we've affected something else that has another ripple effect. And how does that affect, quote, Mandela effects? So trust me on this when I say to you that in the future videos, we are going to go in further, visiting with Dolores Cannon, maybe a little bit more Nostradamus, and how it all ties in to Mandela effects and different timelines. And oh my, it is all going to be very woo, but it's so fascinating, and we can now begin to back it up. These videos that I love that Dolores did back in 96, she did not know about the viruses and the bioweapons and, who is the super genius that's coming forward. But now we can sort of apply those things that she said, and we can infer a lot. But you know what? At the end of the day, you have to make the decision. And how does it affect you? So please leave a comment in the description, or a comment below. And then I will leave her book in the description box below so you can go and buy that and do your own deep dive into these conversations between Nostradamus and Dolores Cannon. And if you could, please like and subscribe. And if you would like your own remote viewing session, or if you would like your own QHHT session, please visit sallyknopp.com, and let's talk about igniting the superhuman in you and what can you envision. Because you know what? It doesn't begin or end with Nostradamus or Edgar Cayce. You've got it too. And in future videos, we're going to talk about that. So take care for now.